Nuked Radio. This is episode number 32. Today is Thursday, May 17th. I am your host, Christina Consolo. With me today is Jules and Kurt from room 101 on Orion. Jules, I already have my story for next Monday's WTF.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, rocks from beach catch fire in woman's pocket. And a few people emailed me this last night and this morning from San Clemente, California. This was in KABC. A woman literally burned a hole in her pocket from rocks collected on a family beach trip to San Clemente. In an Eyewitness News exclusive, authorities say the woman suffered severe burns. The rocks contain various colors, some green, some orange. There were 7 of them altogether collected by the family during a fun morning at Upper Trussels on San Onofre State Beach last Saturday. The daughters were playing with the rocks, and she took them away, and I guess basically they combusted in her pocket due to friction. Orange County Fire Authority Captain Mark Stone said there were actual flames coming off the woman's cargo shorts. We found that a 43-year-old female did have severe burns to her legs, 2nd and 3rd degree. The incident remains under investigation, and I'll drop a link for you guys in chat. Look at the pictures of these rocks. When I saw it, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. They're green and clear, and they look just like uranium glass.
Yeah, well, the fact that her shorts started on fire really took me by surprise.
Yeah, and what they think happened is that there was a white phosphorus that caught fire from them rubbing together, or a red phosphorus. The rocks are being analyzed, and as soon as I put red and white phosphorus into Google to see if it would have any possible connection to Fukushima, which is what people were emailing me about, I found out that phosphorus is created in nuclear reactors. And it just happens to be that these were on the San Onofre beach. Now, whether it's from, I don't know, Fukushima or San Onofre is highly unlikely, in my opinion. Most likely it's probably natural or from a fireworks display, which phosphorus is used. But it is a beta emitter. So that's my submission for Monday's WTF.
Well, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I wanted to say hi to Debbie and her husband and tell her to check out the new forecast. She has inspired me, and we're going to be doing a new series called The Nuke Industry is Dead that goes along with the forecast, where we combine a video of our beautiful Earth and how the nuke industry has changed it. The first video that I put out last night is of an epic skydive, which obviously is no longer safe if you're skydiving through fallout. I had a really good response when I posted that ISS video of the Northern Lights over the Earth. People really like that, and I think they're getting tired of looking at the radars endlessly, so we're going to just try to do something a little different and maybe do it, for a series of 10 or so videos. So check that out. And speaking of air quality, this is another story that people have been sending me. The Nuclear Security Commission is measuring background radiation over Baltimore right now. The agency in charge of national nuclear security and incident response is flying a helicopter over the city of Baltimore to conduct background radiation checks in the city between May 14th and 16th. So I guess they did that already. NNSA officials said on May 11th that the radiation assessment of naturally occurring levels of radiation will cover approximately 10 square miles, and it would complete the assessment operations using a helicopter equipped with remote gamma radiation sensing technology. The helicopter will fly in a grid pattern over the areas 300 feet or higher above the ground surface at a speed of approximately 80 miles per hour, said the agency. And they explained that the measurement of naturally occurring radiation is to establish baseline levels and is a normal part of security and emergency preparedness. Now, when else have we seen this happen? This was published on mynorthwest.com. July 11th of 2011, helicopters were used to measure radiation around Puget Sound. The idea behind this is to get a good sense of what kind of radioactive materials at what levels can be found just on an average day in our area. But, you know, if they're interested in measuring background radiation from natural sources, not man-made sources, I would think they would be doing this type of survey on the ground where people are. So the fact that they're doing it up in the air makes me wonder if they're checking radiation levels. And, you know, the East Coast has really got hit by rain recently. Now, this was also done July 5th of 2011. This was in press.com. Helicopter is part of Department of Energy radiation study. Western Washington residents should not be alarmed as slow, low-flying helicopter scopes the area from July 11th to 28th. This is when we were getting some really big spikes in the Pacific Northwest last summer. Potterblog came out with a video last night saying that he has detected radioactive soot in the U.S. from soil samples that were sent to him, which indicates there may have possibly been a fuel fire within the last month at Fukushima. That's the theory that he's going on, and he mentioned this Baltimore survey as well. And for those of us who've been paying attention to the TEPCO and JNN cameras, there was a very, very dense smoke event that occurred, I want to say it was about 10 days ago. Jules, do you remember that? You couldn't even see the reactors.
Yeah,
it was so smoky there. And someone had posted they saw a fireball on the camera, and then I went and I watched hours of video and didn't see any kind of fireball. It seemed like the light in the background from the incineration area was kind of being warped or changed because of all this smoke. And if you weren't used to watching the cameras, it might have looked like there was some kind of explosion. Didn't see any actual fire going on, but there was a lot of stuff in the air. And now, you know, we have this soot that's detected, and we have these radiation measurements going on. And it could have something to do with what's going on this weekend in that area, and we'll get to that in a moment, too. We've been spreading the word about Fukushima quite a bit. I had an interview last night with Richard from Gold is Money on Blog Talk. We had a great conversation. I want to say hi to any of his listeners that are listening to us today. Tonight, I'll be on Wide Awake News with Charlie McGrath for his second hour at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And also, I want to mention, and I'll probably bring this up a few times in the coming weeks, there's going to be a function in the Detroit area on June 9th. Peacenik presents Where Are You Going to Run When the Radiation Comes at the Phoenix Cafe in Hazel Park, Michigan. Sherry Lutz has been organizing this. It starts at 6 p.m. to 11:30. I'm going to be speaking as well as someone from Beyond Nuclear, and we will be screening the movie Into Eternity about the Oncola in Scandinavia. Someone else who's been doing some interviewing is Lorraine Murray. She was on Exopolitics within the past week, and I'm going to drop a link in for you guys. It's almost an hour long, and unfortunately at the end it got cut off when she was going to make suggestions about dealing with Fukushima, so I'm going to write to that guy and make sure that he posts a second video. She gave some very sobering statistics about athletes and cardiac arrest. This is something that Kevin Blanchard mentioned too, about the number of young athletic people, runners and so forth, that are being treated for leukemia in the center where he is in Salt Lake City. And I have an email also that I want to share from a farmer with some of his observations that he's made in the past year in New Hampshire. And we'll give a rundown on any news as well, although since Michio Kaku dropped the liquid uranium bomb on us last week, there hasn't been much new news, except they're still doing measurements and talking about Reactor 4. When we come back, we'll talk more about that. You're listening to Nuked Radio. And we are back with Nuked Radio. Lorraine Murray gave a new interview. I dropped a link into chat for you guys. If you get a chance, please watch the entire thing. Here's some of the statistics that she mentioned in this interview. Number one, heart attacks and cardiac events have tripled in athletes since Fukushima. She gave the example of a long-distance runner in New Mexico. This was in February of this year. He went on a training exercise in the Gila wilderness, and he never came back. They found his body a few days later. He had died of cardiac arrest. In Pennsylvania and Texas, there's been a few races. Up to 6 runners have either died or had heart failure during the race. All were with between 20 to 30 years of age. There was an athlete in England who had cardiac arrest while he was in the hospital being treated for this condition. Another one of his teammates announced at the game that he has acute leukemia. In Europe, Italy, and in the United States, racehorses have been dying in the past few months. And she had remarked that when you see something happening in humans and animals at the same time, it points to environmental factors. And what is new in our environment is Fukushima. I was at a store the other day that had a TV going, and I was just waiting in line, kind of watching this bike race. And I guess it's a pretty famous bike race. It starts in San Francisco. There were like 100 participants, and they're using the Pacific Coast Highway for their route, going a couple hundred miles south. You know, not a single one of them is wearing a mask. You can see these guys are breathing really heavy. And it's just so concerning to see that kind of activity outside in that region of the country with people not having any protection. Another point that Loren brought up was that BP contaminated the entire Caribbean region with chemicals that the U.S. government asked them not to use. And that core exit has been measured in hailstones and rain on the East Coast. She also talked about synergistic relationships or multiplier effects from both Fukushima fallout and core exit together. Both of those together interact with each other and increase toxicity by 10%. And, you know, she is a meticulous data researcher. Horrific contamination is occurring also from fracking, contaminating our groundwater supply, which has taken millions of years to develop. It's not replaceable with a few winter storms. And then she also brings up the ties from BP, the Queen of England, the London financiers, being part of a global depopulation agenda, lays this out in the rest of the interview, and that these international financiers are causing chaos in our society by exposing us to all these chemicals. In terms of Fukushima, not everyone will die, but there certainly will be a die-off, and it's going on all around us. And at this point, her position is that it's irrefutable that nuclear technologies have been created to exterminate portions of the human race. I've been writing some articles for End the Lie, and that's actually what our article is going to be about this weekend. And I saw a quote yesterday that really struck me. Depleted uranium spread by hundreds of tons around the world from the U.S. by our military weapons systems. What goes around comes around. And now we're getting hit with the fallout from Fukushima. It certainly is one reason why you should always be nice to people. The other more obvious reason is because it's the right thing to do. And what I'm really noticing in a lot of people who've been sending me comments and emails and so forth, they don't care if I use their name on the radio. They don't care if they have their name associated with these mutation pictures, except for one guy who insists on going by Wild Bill from Utah. People aren't scared of the nuke industry anymore. We're on to their game. And I can write or I can talk about the government lying to you or killing babies because I know that it's true, and I don't care if I'm tagged or I'm flagged or I'm put on a list or I'm logged into some kind of database because I'm using a combination of words that flag me as a terrorist or a troublemaker. Those words have actually been published. There's a list of about 100 words that you'll get flagged for if you post them on Facebook. And I'm going to look up all the ones that pertain to Fukushima or the nuke industry and post those in the article. I wanted to also share this email that I got from a gentleman named Scott in New Hampshire. I'm responding to a story you had on nuclear industry in Fukushima, giant nail in the coffin of humanity on mutated plants and vegetables. We have the same problem here. Last summer I grew a crop of tobacco and sunflower plants. The tobacco should have reached 6 to 7 feet before flowering. Some of the tobacco plants flowered at 12 inches up to 2 feet when they should have been at least 6 feet. I had sunflowers that grew 2 sunflower heads from one top or stalk. The sunflower heads looked like they had a quarter of one side cut off them, and the 2 were welded back together. And there's a picture of that right on Mutation Watch's Facebook page. I didn't pay much attention to the problems, but after contacting the Department of Agriculture, they told me it may be from the buildup of cesium in the rainwater. This was in New Hampshire last summer. They acknowledged this. This spring, just 1 month ago, I started big boy tomato plants. I have one of them flowering at 12 inches. I have bush beans flowering at 6 inches. They haven't started producing vegetables yet, but I will take photos of them this time if they are deformed. I didn't take any last year, so I don't have any to show you, but I will say we are having the problem of early maturity of vegetables. I have a friend in Florida who tells me the problem they are having is the grapes and vegetables are not flowering at all. So if this problem is connected, then different effects are taking place depending on what type of radiation is falling. Or Fukushima versus core exit, maybe. One thing that seems blatantly obvious is that we need to have soil and rainwater tested on a widespread basis, and this is something that our EPA should be doing. This is not something that people on Facebook should have to undertake. We're doing this job for free when we've bought all these machines for the EPA to use for just this type of situation. So if you haven't checked out Mutation Watch, I'll be posting dozens of pictures there this weekend, and we'll upload them to Tumblr also. Also, I want to give you guys a rundown on any news. Like I said, there hasn't been a whole lot of new stuff said. TEPCO releases document in response to the concern that Unit 4 spent fuel pool may collapse. They're going to do a first inspection, which begins tomorrow, and I saw an NISA interview where this guy was getting grilled about Reactor 4, and he admitted that they've never measured the building from the outside to see how much it's moved, and part of the problem is that they don't have a benchmark or a stable area to refer to, I'm assuming because so much of the ground moved. But they are supposed to be starting that tomorrow. You're listening to Nuked Radio. We'll be back in a moment.
Beyond the sea, somewhere waiting for me, my lover stands on golden sand.
And we are back. Now, hopefully, the bomb won't be dropped on us during the NATO summit this weekend. May 20th is a date that crop circles have been warning about also. And we talked about some of this stuff on WTF last Monday. In addition to the NATO summit in Chicago, which preparations have included having the Red Cross make evacuation plans, that the Red Cross says Department of Homeland Security indicated could be nuclear related. But DHS said they never said that. This was about 2 weeks ago, and there's been lots and lots of talk about this online. Other things that are going on this weekend. Jules, you said the UN G8 is meeting at Camp David.
Yeah, I believe so.
I thought NATO was moving to Camp David, but I might have had those events confused.
Yeah, it was a G8, I believe, that was supposed to be in Chicago initially, and then they moved that to Camp David.
Okay, and possibly those radiation readings they're doing in Baltimore, you know, they're in the general vicinity, that area of the country. Maybe that's being done to check for any kind of nuclear materials, might interfere with the G8 summit. I don't know. Russians are starting their drills in Denver. There's going to be a fire in the sky eclipse. It's a rare, unusual eclipse that will be seen from the West Coast. Something else that's been brought up, and I've seen this big red X that appeared on Google Earth about a year ago, and there was lots of conspiracies about what this big red X meant. It's along the Aleutian Island chain in Alaska, and it was there for a period of time. There's screen captures of it online. It just so happens that the eclipse is going to pass over that site, and Nostradamus had actually predicted a worldwide earthquake in association with this eclipse on this weekend. Were you going to say something, Jules?
I was, about the big red X. I remember that day that that it appeared, and we actually had opened Google Earth, and it was right after Fukushima happened, and it looked pretty ominous to me. I believe, too, there was a large incoming potential comet at the time. Remember, they'd been doing that. There was some sort of exercise that was happening up that way also.
Well, with all this impending doom, and we have enough of it already going around with Fukushima spent fuel pool number 4, I thought it would be a good time to reiterate the global consciousness. And there was an exceptional video from Mayan Manifester on YouTube that I attached to the bottom of the last article that I wrote, and I wanted to read an excerpt from it because I wrote it with all the people in mind that I've met over the past 14 months online, and this profound connection that we all have by studying this problem. And our numbers are growing. Just from 5/9 to 5/15, we've had 32,305 hits on the Radchick page from people sharing stuff. We've had 40,000 people view the mutation video that I put out. We also have a couple of pages, Farming and Fallout, Fukushima's Falling Apart, Are You Ready?, which is a survival page, Mutation Watch, of course, and then there's 10 or 12 nuclear reactor pages that we've started, and we just keep adding them as problems come up. There's a couple other websites of people that have been following this story. CAN, which stands for Coalition Against Nukes, Fukushima 311 that Kevin had mentioned, also Abolish All Nuclear, and of course Radiation Watch that I mention all the time, and another page called Rad Weather Watchers. And they cover not only the radiation stuff, but HARP and some other things too. But this is the excerpt that I wrote. Not only do we have citizen journalists in the alternative media on top of this, but citizen scientists as well. Have you met your new Fukushima expert who just might live next door? These are people who have taught themselves everything they possibly could about nuclear physics, radiation, Geiger counters, atomic power, nuclear plants, the effects of radiation on health, and mitigation. These citizen scientists have studied bombs, fallout, and weather and wind patterns. They've been monitoring radiation levels across the country with their own equipment that they purchased out of pocket and learned how to use. They've read anything and everything they can get their hands on. They know the difference between alpha, beta, and gamma radiation and how to avoid it. They know that besides cancer, radiation can do all kinds of things to you, like severely compromise your immune system, intelligence, thyroid, or make you aggressive, confused, and fatigued. You might bruise or bleed in weird places and feel more sick than usual. They have learned all of this out of their own instincts of survival. Sometimes they even go 2 days without sleep when bad stuff is happening just to make sure they are keeping on top of issues as much as possible. You know, I think the people in the nuke industry severely underestimate how much these Fukushima followers really know. And that was pretty evident when I interviewed Jim Walsh with some of the stuff that he tried to slide by us. In my opinion, the nuke industry died when Fukushima happened. But they're doing everything they can to hang on, but their secrets are being exposed. regardless of what happens this weekend or how much it's hyped, it's simple to deal with this. You stay informed. You have a plan. If you're downwind of Chicago, have a plan and talk about maybe relatives or friends that you might have in the South in case you need to go away for a few days. And I also wanted to mention, because I see people all over forums talking about watching the eclipse, you can actually get a solar burn to your retina. You cannot look at the sun or an eclipse without some type of protection between you and the source, because your eye contains a lens that's like a magnifying glass. When you look at the sun, it actually focuses those light beams right in the center of your retina, which is an area called the macula. And the macula contains cones, which are the cells that see color. It's a very, very small part of the back of the eye, but it's directly back in the eye. And then all the surrounding area of the retina contains rods. That's what you see black and white with. And all the years that I worked in ophthalmology, I can't tell you how many kids I photographed that had what's called solar retinopathy, where they looked at the sun and it burned a huge hole in their retina. So you have to be really careful with that. And if you search out how to safely look at an eclipse, you'll see some things that you can use there, some techniques to protect your eyes. I also noticed with that sunspot lately, too, people were commenting that, oh, I can see the sunspot just by looking at the sun. It's so big. But you shouldn't be looking at the sun ever without special protection. So, Jules, are you going to be watching this NATO weekend?
Oh, I definitely am. Not sure what to think. I saw that there were protesters already there yesterday. So have a feeling that things might get a little bit out of hand. They've been militarizing that for a month now, haven't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've been erecting all kinds of fences. They've had guys walking around with, machine guns in downtown Chicago, getting people ready, for the military presence. They had the Black Hawk drills a few weeks prior to that they didn't warn anybody about in the city. So as Nibiru Magic had said when he was on the show, there's lots of ways to protest and get your voice heard without actually being in the thick of it. So when we come back, we're going to play that video from Mayan Manifester, and I'll drop a link into chat also because she overlaid it on top of a mutation video that she shot. It's really exceptional, and I hope you guys like it. We'll be back with Nuked Radio.
Tonight's talk is consciousness, creativity, and the brain. And if you have a golf ball-sized consciousness, when you read a book, you'll have a golf ball-sized understanding. When you look out, a golf ball-sized awareness. And when you wake up in the morning, a golf ball-sized wakefulness. But if you could expand that consciousness, then you read the book, more understanding. You look out, more awareness. And when you wake up, more wakefulness. It's consciousness. And there's an ocean of pure, vibrant consciousness inside each one of us. And it's right at the source and base of mind, right at the source of thought, and it's also at the source of all matter.
There is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particle of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter.
Matter seems like a good place to begin. The solidity of the world seems totally indisputable. As a fixed thing that you can see and touch, your body is also reassuringly solid. But beginning with Einstein, modern physics has assured us that this solidity is a mirage.
All of physical matter, everything we have around us, is the result of a frequency. And what that also means is that if you amplify the frequency, the structure of the matter will change.
What this self-contained system is a hologram. It's what I call the super hologram. Everything within it is an expression of that hologram. This is one of the great characteristics of a hologram, is that every part of a holographic picture is a smaller version of the whole.
It's as if reality is so connected that when you look at one small part, you can see things about other parts. That the entire whole is contained in the part. And in a sense, you can't divide reality up because we're cutting up a hologram. We can't find where one particle is because it's always a reflection of all particles.
In a hologram, the whole pattern is whole and complete unto itself. And if you were to take any little portion of this whole out and examine it closely, you will see the entire pattern repeating itself again and again and again. Anywhere in this pattern, if we were to change one little aspect on any one of these little holograms, that change would be reflected throughout the entire system.
Quantum physics has revealed what ancient masters knew. Matter does not exist. The concept of substance arose from the philosophy of Aristotle. And from that concept came science's conception of matter. The fact of the matter is that the substance of the universe is consciousness. Belief that the substance of the universe is matter leads to what I call a fear-greed dichotomy. As people in their quiet desperation attempt to accumulate as many material possessions and riches as possible. In fact, the substance of the universe is consciousness. Therefore, it is behavior that is important.
If you get into the realms of fear, fear is a very slow, dense vibrational state. And the more you embody fear, and the whole of this manipulated society is globally is structured to make us fear, to make us have stress, to make us worry about tomorrow, and have guilt about yesterday, and forget about now. It brings us into a slow vibrating dense state.
We should be very careful about what we believe about the future. The more you attach to a belief system, the more, if reality is holographic, you're helping create it by believing it. And, you know, the great clairvoyant Edgar Cayce said that our every thought, that reality is built out of thought, and our every thought starts to build reality, and we're like, every thought is like a spider, we're like spider spinning web, and that web starts to build and build.
Information is the key, because this matrix, this illusory reality that we think is real, people say to me, what is the matrix? Answer, it's information.
Information creates fractals. As information flow increases, the number of fractals, mathematically speaking, increase. This was demonstrated by a mathematician named Theodore Gord. Fractals are unpredictable functions, so things are becoming more and more unpredictable.
When you start getting into fractals and chaos theory, when you look at it in terms of a society, this is where it starts to cross over into the so-called Illuminati or the negative elite, the world leaders with their philosophy of order out of chaos. There is some truth to that, in the sense that when the system becomes highly destabilized, there will be random shifts that suddenly self-organize into higher complexity.
At the subatomic level, reality behaves in accordance with the expectation of the observer or the measurer, scientist. Why is that remarkable? Because everything in the universe is composed of those subatomic particles.
These atoms are particles that are whirling at lightning speeds around huge empty spaces. And the particles aren't material objects. They are fluctuations of energy and information in a huge void of energy and information.
What the science now is showing is that when you can change the field that the atom is in, you change the atom. we're made of those atoms. So when we have feelings in our hearts, we're changing the field that connects the stuff everything is made of, and we literally are altering our physical reality.
Once you establish the reality we live in, and the nature of what the physical body is, it's a biological computer, and the nature of what we are, which is consciousness, and then you start, as I have, looking at the way this world is structured and how it works and why they do this and why they do that, it suddenly brings into crystal clarity why the world is structured as it is. Because, you know, people look through their eyes and they think this is the world, but it isn't. It's a tiny, tiny frequency range within an infinite energy field of infinite frequency ranges. And basically, it's like a holographic television channel.
It is the act of consciousness that actually creates the building blocks the universe is made of. I can't imagine a universe that exists without us, because it's the act of us observing the world around us that is creating, allowing us to create as we go in a participatory universe. We may never find the edge of our universe as we're looking to define what this universe looks like. We may never find the smallest particle in the quantum world to see what this stuff is that we're made out of. And the reason is because everywhere we look, everywhere that consciousness explores with the expectation that something will be there, that exploration, that act of looking, observation, is the act that creates something for us to see. That we are actually building this universe as we go.
Consciousness is the programming language of the universe. We are consciousness conductors. That's what we do. That's who we are. Consciousness comes through us. It emanates from us. We are the creators. We are the ones who are targeted on this planet because we are the ones who transmit the reality just like everybody else does. If you switch your brain off and you are sucked into the mainstream media illusion, we must understand that we are being used because we create reality. So if we are manipulated in a certain way, and if we are modulated in a certain way, then our creation becomes not ours but somebody else's.
And what happens if we all do it? Everyone in this room decides to take control of reality. I'm talking about reality. I'm talking about quantum physics. I'm talking about taking control of things from the quantum level up, from the molecular level up, and it works. One of the things we're actually dealing with is some kind of operating system that can be hacked using words.
The world is like a ride at an amusement park, and when you choose to go on it, you think it's real, because that's how powerful our minds are. And the ride goes up and down and round and round. It has thrills and chills, and it's very brightly colored, and it's very loud, and it's fun for a while. Some people have been on the ride for a long time, and they begin to question, is this real, or is this just a ride? And other people have remembered, and they come back to us, and they say, hey, don't worry, don't be afraid, ever, because this is just a ride.
People speaking were David Lynch, Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra, David Icke, and other brilliant minds. Who was the Scottish guy?
That I don't know.
The video is called Fasciation, Mutations, and Consciousness 2012. Points that were made, and we live in an ocean of pure, vibrant consciousness. Reality is built out of our thoughts. Information is the key. Random thoughts suddenly can self-organize into a higher complexity, especially in times of chaos or instability like we're in now. All the more reason to share love, caring, and concern for your fellow man, and use social media and your daily conversations to spread the word about Fukushima. Keep your eye on the news this weekend, and everybody stay safe. Thank you, Kurt, and thank you, Jules, for being here today.
Thanks, Christina.